Hey, ladies and gents, this is Pamela getting on here real quick to talk about a couple of things. I have taken a lazy day today to kind of take more time off the computer to make lunch, drink iced tea, keep the TV off, play a little music, and just enjoy my day before the rains come tomorrow. As of yesterday, my brother arrived at the place where he is due to work for the next 2 weeks. In fact, he should be getting off work between 7:30 our time, 6:30 out where he is. So, yeah. But so far things seem to be going well with my brother. He got out there about 6:30 last night, between 6:15 and 6:30 last night. I called him on the cell phone and he says, "Well, Pammy, I was about to call you." And I said, "Well, forget it. I called you because I've been wanting to hear how your trip went and that if you made it safe." He's like, "Yeah, I made it safe." And the next thing you know, I hear that the person that he's staying with has a dog and the dog stole his hamburger from him. So, yeah, that made me laugh. And I said, "Well, bro, I just wanted to call you before I went to bed for the night. I wanted to make sure that you got there okay." And he says, "Yeah, I'm here. I'm tired, but I'm here." And it's just really scary because when my brother got this offer to go and do a job, of course he's going to get paid some money. It'll be a good cushion for him until he could find a job in case unemployment doesn't come to his aid. Because, as I've said, over the last month or so, he's had a pretty rough time of it. He's worked at Macy's Furniture since 1985, and to have his career end the way it has, it shouldn't happen to anybody, but it does. But I don't want him to get this COVID thing. And I'm sure you heard about Boris Johnson over there in the UK being moved to the intensive care unit over there at one of the hospitals. And I look at it this way: an everyday citizen like you or me wouldn't be able to get into the hospital if we really wanted to get the test unless we were on death's door. But even then, if you're on death's door, where you can't breathe and you got a fever and you don't know what's happening, even then, you're not guaranteed that you're going to be put on a vent or taken up to the ICU anyway. Just go back and look at the one where a wife talks about how her husband, a songwriter that penned one of the 80s classics, "I Love Rock and Roll" for Joan Jett of Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. How he went from having what seemed like a cold and then the flu to where he couldn't breathe. And they finally tested the guy, but by the time they did that, he was so blocked up with fluid, it kept his system from working properly. And by late that night, he was gone. By the time the doctor said they would get him up to a floor, the woman left her husband in the hospital, completely exhausted. Because when she got there to the hospital, she had to fight 3 security guys to let her go back to see her husband, because the doctor says you should come in and say your goodbyes. And she said this little saying here: not only are you denied the right to go to a hospital and get tested before you show symptoms, but if you do get this, my husband would have died alone. And you have to fight to get the test, and you have to fight to get your relative up to ICU if you could do it in time. And it's sad. People like Boris Johnson can get the test right away. Some members of our government have gotten the test right away. when everyday people like you and me cannot get the test right away. And some people have died due to overcrowding at the hospitals, or in some cases, gross mismanagement has happened that could cost people's lives. And it's just really sad. But I heard that Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the UK, is sitting in the ICU ward tonight. And people are saying, if you're in the ICU, you're not normally running anything. Let me see what I can find out here. While I'm logged in here. Boris Johnson in ICU. Yeah, let's see. I'm not going to go to MSNBC. I don't want to hear what Trump's got to say. But here's what it says here. From the Post. From Washington Post. This says, Boris Johnson sick with coronavirus. Moved to intensive care unit after condition worsens. And it goes on to say, let's see. Please note, the Washington Post is providing this story for free so that all readers could have access to this important information about the coronavirus. For more free stories, sign up for our daily COVID updates newsletter. But this story comes out of London. Let's see. Prime Minister Boris Johnson, one of the world's leaders, has been diagnosed with COVID-19, has been moved to an intensive care unit on Monday evening after his condition had worsened, his official spokesman had said. The PM asked Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab to deputize for him when necessary, giving Raab the power, if needed, to run the British government during this health crisis. And they said he remained conscious as was moved to the ICU as a precaution, and should he require mechanical ventilation, according to 10 Downing Street. Again, it says here, Johnson was conscious as he was moved to the ICU as a precaution should he require mechanical ventilation, according to 10 Downing Street. Raab said Johnson was in safe hands with a brilliant team and was receiving excellent care at the hospital. Asked by the British Broadcasting Company if he was confident that the government was under control tonight, Raab said there was incredibly strong team spirit behind the PM. Johnson, who had been in quarantine at his official residence after testing positive for COVID on the night of March 26, was admitted to St. Thomas Hospital in London Sunday evening with a persistent cough and a fever. And they do have links to live updates should you want to watch. On Monday, while he was said to be under observation, the Prime Minister tweeted, "Last night, on the advice of my doctor, I went into hospital for some routine tests. I'm still experiencing coronavirus symptoms. I'm in good spirits and keeping in touch with my team as we work together to fight the virus and keep everybody safe." And Britain has confirmed 51,608 COVID cases and reported over 5,373 deaths. Johnson's move to the ICU around 7 p.m. their time demonstrated how serious this condition is. In Italy, Spain, and China, experience has shown that mortality rates soar for those admitted to ICU. And it says, Nathal McDermott, a clinical lecturer at King's College in London, said that if Johnson were still conscious, It's highly unlikely that he would be on a mechanical ventilator. They might be putting him on some other form of non-invasive ventilatory support, she said. So if a mask delivers a degree of pressure, so it helps offset some of the distressing breathing, that's what they would try first. Although Downing Street said the move was a precaution, McDermott said the PM wouldn't be moved to intensive care without his doctors giving him some form of breathing support. Otherwise, he would have stayed in the ward and observed him there. All day Monday, his office declined to describe what tests or treatments he had received or say whether he developed breathing problems or pneumonia, two of the common symptoms for coronavirus patients sick enough to be admitted to the hospital. Until he was moved to the ICU, Johnson was said by his staff to be working from his bed. Over the course of this afternoon, the condition of the PM has worsened, and on the advice of his medical team, he has been moved to the ICU at the hospital, the spokesman said, whose protocol is not named. As the Downing Street statement was read out on the BBC, the state broadcaster showed aerial footage of St. Thomas Hospital where police officers were stationed outside. The hospital is on the south bank of the River Thames, directly across from Big Ben and the Palace of Westminster. The 55-year-old Johnson has no known underlying health conditions. He was last seen by the public in a short video posted on Friday in his Twitter feed, urging all Britons to remain indoors except to go shopping, visit the doctors, or exercise. And in the clips, he looked ragged with puffy eyes and pale skin. After the news broke that he had been transferred to ICU, wishes for a speedy recovery poured in from around the world. Even our president says, "I want to send best wishes to a very good friend of mine and a friend to our nation, PM Boris Johnson. We are very saddened to hear that he was taken into intensive care this afternoon a while ago, and Americans are all praying for his recovery. He's been a really good friend. He's really been something very special, strong, resolute, doesn't give up." Trump said he had two pharmaceutical companies that he spoke with on Monday to contact London immediately to offer help to Johnson. The French president, Emmanuel Macron, says, I hope he quickly overcomes this ordeal. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says there are difficult days and offered an embrace for the British people. And let's see what else it says here. His fiancée, Carrie Sandmans, who is pregnant with the couple's first child, is recovering herself from the symptoms associated with this COVID-19, although she has not been tested. Buckingham Palace says Queen Elizabeth II has been kept informed of the PM's condition. On Sunday night, around the same time Johnson was admitted to the hospital, the Queen delivered an extraordinary public address in which she spoke of an increasingly challenging time, a time of disruption of the life of our country, a disruption that has brought grief to some, financial difficulties to many, and enormous changes in the lives of us all. The rules for whoever takes over as the PM becomes incapacitated are not as straightforward in Britain as in the United States, where the vice president would assume the duties. Although Johnson has designated Raab as a stand-in, he might require cabinet approval. It isn't as cut and dry and black and white as it is in the U.S., says Tom Bale, a professor of politics at Queen Mary University of London. We are somebody to be suddenly struck down, and there are no named interim in place. It would be ultimately up to the cabinet to decide. The prime minister is not the chief executive, the way the president is. Bale said it wasn't surprising that Johnson didn't immediately step aside. It's very difficult for PMs to relinquish their power, emotionally speaking, he said. He added that Raab getting the official nod would be complicated by his limitations as a public communicator and the fact that most people would point to another senior minister, Michael Gove, as the de facto deputy prime minister. Johnson announced he had COVID on the same day as Health Secretary Matt Hancock and England's chief medical officer Chris Whitty. But Hancock and Whitty were back at their lecterns for a news conference on Monday. So they have a video of the St. Thomas Hospital. So, yeah. But you know, there's a lot of people that don't like Boris Johnson. So, you know, and I really don't have anything to say about Boris Johnson. He's a Trump follower. You know, and it's hit the Queen. It's hit other big people over there. I couldn't even tell you all that had gotten hit over there in the UK with this COVID. The Prime Minister now has it. He's getting worse. At least he's in the ICU, not like some people that I've read about. You know, and one wife, shit. But one wife had to watch her husband languish for 15 hours in a hospital in New York State. So, hang on. God damn it. Can't believe this. Damn telemarketers. We got a pandemic going on and they don't even have the balls to leave a message. But, you know, with Boris Johnson getting in the hospital and getting treatment, and regular everyday people cannot. You know, you're not showing symptoms. You can't be admitted. You know, and there are people that are angry. You know, you have to be near death's door to have anything done to help you, if you can get the help. And then, let's see, let's go to YouTube here real quick. People are talking about the PM. One says, I hope he gets well. Hopefully he'll get out from this very soon. Probably he's learning something that in other circumstances would not be possible. He's conservative, pro-Brexit. Does that tell you something? Another one says, don't go outside. One says, rest in peace, Boris Johnson. Wow. You know, if they're sending wishes from America, you don't speak for me. You know, and I said over maybe 15 minutes ago, I said, that hot shot got a vent when everyday hardworking people can't. They have to be near death before they can even be tested or even admitted. Another one says, would be nice to see Trump sharing the bug with Boris. And I'll share the video that this is talking about. Another one says, imagine if he dies. Another one says, rest in peace, Bojo. Another one says, good riddance, he can't die fast enough. Now, if only Trump would catch it next. And it was written by Amelia Castillo. You know, another one says, I pray he'll get well and have a complete recovery and that his family will be comforted at this time. Another one called The Doctor says, you're all sheep, being deceived. Your rights are being taken away every day. Agenda 21, ID 2020. Cashless society, here we come. Oh no. Or oh man, not Mr. Brext. You know? And let's see here. What a joke. Another one says, what a joke. This clown wanted everyone infected. Serves the nut job right. Another one says he'll be dead in a few days. Let's all pray for the world. You know, and somebody said they don't move you to ICU without good cause. Yeah, unless you got money, unless you're a big, high-powered, highfalutin money launderer like that guy. And the reason why I get mad at things like this is that an ordinary, everyday Joe, not as well known as Joan Jett, went through 15 hours of hell. It started out what seemed like a cold and then the flu. And then it went from bad to worse to where he couldn't breathe. They finally admit him. And when they finally tested him, they kept telling his wife that they were going to move, that this songwriter, they were going to move him up to the ICU, but it never came. When they finally did try to get him up there, he was on the verge of death. They had him sedated or some shit. And when they called her and said, he's out of time. Come down here and say your goodbyes. That poor woman had to fight security just to get back and see her husband before he died. When they finally were getting ready to move him, she was just like so exhausted. She wasn't about to go with another go around with the security people at that particular hospital in New York State. And she walks 3 miles to her house where somebody tells her that her husband had died. So, yeah. But I'm going to get off, check my messages or check my caller ID, find out who the hell's been calling here. And I want to try and get a hold of my brother by at least 7:30 or 7:45. So, I will chat at you later. But let me know how you feel about Boris Johnson's latest turn of events. Maybe it'll teach him something about being a little nicer to people and not be such a Trump follower. And he's got a kid on the way too. He's got a wife that's pregnant. She's due to have a child. I don't know when. Maybe it'll help him clean up his act. Maybe he shouldn't be such a follower of such a poisonous guy like Trump. And I can't say I feel sorry for Boris. I really can't. But we are in this quandary. We are in it together, I suppose. But read the stories below, and I'll be sure to put the links below. If you want to sign up for any and all updates on this COVID thing, do so. But I'll get back on here in a couple days. We'll talk some more about this shit. But if Boris Johnson has any sense, he'll not take things for granted. If he lives through this, I hope it gives him a little bit of that fear of God everybody's always talking about. Maybe it should give him the fear of losing everything. Because everyday Joes that work hard to support their families or work hard to make a life for their wife and their kids, everyday hardworking Joes can't even get the test before they show symptoms. And you have to be on death's door before they would even give you the time of day. And yet, Boris Johnson gets worse and he's automatically admitted to the ICU No red tape to cut through. Oh, you're at the top of the line, man. Come on in. We'll get you taken care of. How fair is that? Think about it. Have a good night, everybody, and I'll do a better video tomorrow. I got things I gotta do. Good night.